group of Liberal and NDP MPs traveled to the West Bank to meet with Palestinians this week, a move that comes at a delicate moment for Canada-Israeli relations. Supporters say the trip shows commitment to human rights and dialogue. Critics argue it risks undermining official foreign policy channels. Now, the timing and optics raise questions about who speaks for Canada abroad. The trip also exposes growing divisions in how Parliament approaches the Israeli-Palestine conflict. Eddie, this one is leaving me shaking my head big time. If you have 5 Liberal MPs and a New Democrat MP going over, they were denied entry yesterday. And one of the main reasons they were denied entry into the West Bank is the Israelis believe that the group that is sponsoring this trip, they have that group listed as a terror entity, which leads to a whole lot of questions. And one of the first questions I have about it is, like, what is going on? This, to me, whether it is or isn't, and perception is everything in politics, but it seems to me like this could be construed as a conflict of interest. Now, maybe it was cleared by parliamentary officials. I would hope, anyway, that it was cleared, and I would hope that Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, was aware of this and gave it his blessing, because, of course, he was as Canada, representing Canada, we were among some of the first to again come out and say we were going to recognize the Palestinian state, which drew a very cold response from the Israeli Prime Minister. But here's the thing. This is an all-expenses-paid trip by the group, the Canadian Muslim Vote, a Canadian nonprofit. The primary funding source is apparently the Islamic Relief Canada, Islamic Relief Worldwide. Now, to me, that's almost like a lobby group saying, say, for example, a company walked in and they wanted to impress some MPs trying to get their votes, right? Curry their votes in favor. And they take them on an all-expenses paid trip like this. Now, these people are going over and they're saying, while we're going over, we want to see what's going on over there and how we can help. No. If you want to see what's going on and how you can help, then you do it through the proper channels. We do have a couple of departments and ministers who look after this kind of stuff. They went with about 30 or 40 heads of aid agencies from Canada. On this fact-finding mission. And to me, I cannot believe that Prime Minister Carney, well, I guess I can, if he comes out and says we're going to recognize the Palestinian state. But, our relations with Israel right now are tense at best.
Very, yeah.
Yeah. So why would you, again, and it comes back around to back on the October 7th massacre, it's like I've said on many occasions, there were, 12 to 1,500 people killed, Israelis killed in that massacre. And you poke the bear, and then you wonder why that most of Gaza is in nothing but rubble.
Ruins.
Yeah, ruins. Like, and here we are. We're poking the bear in another manner by sending these people over. Fine, if the heads of the aid relief agencies wanted to go over, great, go ahead. And have your trip paid for. But our elected politicians going over, I don't think so. I think there's a real issue here with them accepting that trip. And I could be wrong, could be barking up the wrong tree. Wouldn't be the first time. But if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it is a duck.
Well, Gary, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to look at this as fairly as possible, and you just said something that kind of made me rethink my concept about this whole thing. Is your point? Did Prime Minister Carney know about this? Okay, first of all, and if he did know about this and he signed off on it, the next thought would have been, should we be doing this on an official capacity and dealing directly with the Israeli government to notify them that there is a delegation coming from Canada, along with 40 other aid agencies to come over there to see, how we can actually contribute to lessening the pain of a lot of people in Palestine, even in Israel for that fact. It's just a delegation of aid agencies.
Right.
If they came over on an official capacity, I don't think that they would have been denied entry, because as we talked earlier on, Gary, prior to that, all right, the Canadian Government Security Agency, CSIS, or whoever's in charge of this, Foreign Affairs, would have done some due diligence in terms of, okay, where is the money coming from? Is it you and I paying for this trip, Gary, as taxpayers? Okay, that's one thing, and that's for the pundits to debate this in the House of Commons and on the floor in terms of why are we spending this money. That's a whole other story, but it's done on an official capacity, right? But if this is done as we're looking at right now, with potentially without the express support of the Canadian government or signing off on it officially, our security agencies going through their due diligence would have identified these two organizations you mentioned, the Canadian Muslim Vote and the Islamic Relief Canada. And if from what you said earlier on, the Israeli government, the Border Control, refused entry to our six Canadian MPs on the basis of the fact that these two organizations are classified as terrorist organizations, terrorist entities by the Israeli government. Well, you know what? Canadian Security Agency would have picked this up. So how did he manage to get out of our country with the mindset that we're coming as a delegation from Canada unofficially and trying to get into a war torn region, where the country they're visiting is not on a good footing with Canada as we speak right now, because of the tensions and as a result of Canada supporting a sovereign Palestinian state. So you know what? I understand it was an all for one and one for all situation. If one delegate was refused entry into Israel, none of them would enter. Okay, fine. But Gary, I don't know what these guys were thinking. They're MPs, for crying out loud, and we're not talking about backbenchers or people of insignificance in some departmental agency in the government. These are elected officials that decided one day, you know what, we're going to do our thing for the world and just head out there and be expected to be greeted with open arms on an all expense paid trip funded by two organizations, which they could very well be up and up, but anything that has any sort of Islamic or Muslim association will be highly scrutinized in Israel. Like, what do they think? They were going to be welcomed with open arms? So I'm kind of looking at this right now as, what kind of an embarrassing situation that these six delegates with their entourage, in terms of reputation, poor reputation, soil our reputation as a Canadian government. And you know what? Israel might be scratching their heads and saying, who the hell's in charge up there in Canada? Who are these bozos that try to get into our country? Who do you think? Who do they think they are? Do they think we're stupid? We're just going to let them in? So, Gary, there's a lot of implications here. And you know what? I think the questions have to be asked of the Prime Minister Carney. Did you authorize this move? And there's got to be an answer one way or the other, and consequences, not just for the Prime Minister, but I believe also consequences for these MPs if they so chose to go out there on their own accord without going through proper channels, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, Gary. So this is, this can turn out to be a very, very political hot potato for the Liberal government, but also on the international stage. what are the Israelis thinking of us right now? What is Carney going to do to try to, pacify Netanyahu and his government being pissed off at us in the first place for recognizing Palestine, and in the second place just jaunting over there and expecting them to greet us with open arms when Israel is keeping a very close eye on all organizations affiliated with any sort of Islamic movement or Muslim movement. So it was a very, very strange one when I first saw this. The first thought was, what the hell are you guys doing? That was the first thought that came to mind.
And as I say, Eddie, I keep going back to perception.
Yeah.
And it may have been cleared by the Prime Minister. It may have been cleared by parliamentary officials as, okay, it's all right to accept the all expenses paid trip. But it's to the average person on the street right now struggling, trying to pay for the increasing cost of groceries, for example.
Right.
And because of the dynamics that are involved, anytime you get anything related to the Mideast involved in just regular conversation, it becomes a flashpoint very quickly. And here you have, and they're crying, oh, well, they're indignant because they weren't allowed in. And yet they were told.
What did they expect? I mean, well, Gary, look, I'm sure that both you and I don't want our viewers to get us wrong. Is any aid that can be supplied to that region, I think we're behind it. Okay. I think the world would be encouraged to provide some aid to that very impoverished area as a result of the military aggressions both ways. Unfortunately, Gaza is getting the crap beaten out of them, or has already had the crap beaten out of them. They certainly need aid. There's human beings there, and I don't know. I just have the feeling that if we went over there in an official capacity and the Canadian government and the Israeli government spoke about our efforts to help that war-torn region and give Palestine aid, on a global stage, that would probably look good for the Netanyahu government, and saying we have accepted a Canadian entourage with 40 delegates with aid to the region. I think that would bode well in terms of Netanyahu's profile in the rest of the world, which doesn't look at him very favorably right now. It just went up in smoke because I don't believe they did this properly. And I don't know who the hell was managing or orchestrating this entire activity and travel out there and accepting this donation from these two organizations to pay for all expenses. There has definitely been, Gary, if whether you agree or not, there has been definitely a breakdown in communication somewhere where somebody did something they really should not have, but went ahead and did it anyway. And it comes down to who's representing our government. And now here it's on an international stage, right? And I think you and I have discussed this over coffee a few times. Sometimes we'll have the premiers of our provinces go into another country and kind of negotiate some sort of a deal for the province, which might have Canadian-wide implications, which we kind of say to ourselves, well, wait a minute, you're the premier of your province. What are you doing over in so-and-so overseas and negotiating this, that, and the other thing? Shouldn't the Canadian government be doing this with the country on the other side? So we do have a lot of this MP and premier going on their own accord to try to negotiate one thing or another. So I don't know. If it's from a business perspective, that's one thing because you're looking at business transactions. But when you're looking at humanitarian efforts in a region that's still war torn and continued fighting, I really believe there should be some sort of accountability, and you just can't pull up stakes and go on your own accord and represent Canada when you're not really representing Canada out in official capacity. Gary, what would just imagine they went out there? You have 6 Canadian delegates. What happens if the missiles and bombs and IEDs started blowing up around them? without any sort of official capacity with them. They're there as not necessarily representatives of Canada, but basically ministers of parliament. I mean, governments are not going to necessarily recognize that. And on the other hand, maybe the government in Israel basically saw these individuals as above and beyond them coming over foolishly as a security risk. What do they expect? The military to escort them around these war-torn areas because they just happen to be there? This is you said 6 MPs and an entourage of 40 representatives of aid groups. That is a lot of security to escort these people through war-ravaged sections of Gaza, or even moving into the West Bank, which is up in armed conflicts as well. So I don't know what they were trying to accomplish here. Good Samaritans, great, but they, in my opinion, Gary, they went about it really the wrong way in this particular case.
And it comes back around to a point you raised earlier too, Eddie, about how does this trip affect the already strained relationship with Israel?
Right.
It's not helping it by any stretch of the imagination. And again, it comes back to who's going to take responsibility for this? Well, as far as I'm concerned, it stops right at the desk of the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I think so.
I think maybe that he owes Canadians some kind of an explanation as to what has gone on here. And to me, Poilievre and crew should be on this as well.
Yep.
And especially for the perception of this trip, the way it's going. Again, to me, if the representatives of the aid agencies want to go ahead. And if you want to take the all expenses paid trip, go ahead. But when you're sitting as a member of parliament and you're going to be voting at some point, I'm sure, on some kind of package, or be a member of the government that's saying we're going to provide some kind of a package, there's a perception of conflict of interest there. To me, it's no different than having lobbyists on Parliament Hill, but at least the lobbyists on Parliament Hill are controlled to a certain degree, and you work around the rules that are laid out. I don't know. Maybe this Canadian Muslim vote, just kind of a different name, for a group sponsoring a trip like this. When you think about it,
right.
So, it just stinks as far as I'm concerned, and to get on the news and whine and cry about being denied entry when you knew it was going to happen. You had to know that it was going to happen, especially with an entourage, and especially when the Israelis found out who was sponsoring the trip, the whole 9 yards. It doesn't take a mental giant to figure this one out.
Wow. You think they did this on purpose to embarrass Canada, or maybe embarrass Netanyahu on the global stage? I don't know. It
wouldn't surprise me.
It's just weird. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. But you're absolutely right. Prime Minister Carney, for all the good he's doing, I mean, take 5 steps back, 1 backwards from time to time. Great, but he's got to answer to this. And Gary, unless you see it differently, I don't see him coming out looking good, no matter how the question is posed to him. Did you know about this? Yes or no, right? Either answer is, well, why didn't you know about it? Or why did you approve such a thing without going through channels? He's not gonna look good on the visibility scale at all, whether through our media outlets in the country or on the floor in the House during questions period. I don't know how he's going to be able to spin his way out of this one. It doesn't look good for him at all, Gary. I don't know if you see any way out for him for this.
Um, the only way out is just to admit that there was a screw up along the way. I made a
Yeah.
mistake.
Hmm.
But again, it brings forth a couple of points. And the first one is: are the MPs acting as independent advocates or unofficial diplomats? And if so, who gave them the authority to do that anyway? Again,
Hmm.
we come back to the strained relations between Canada and Israel. What's this going to do to that strained relationship? Is it going down the toilet big time now? And does it really help Palestinian voices, or does it complicate Canada's credibility in all of this? Well, I think it's complicating Canada's credibility. I vote on that side of it for sure. It is
Hmm.
complicating our credibility, and I don't think it's helping Palestinian voices by any stretch of the imagination. Even if they had gotten in, I don't think it was going to do anything to help Palestinian voices, one way or the other.
Right.
It would have been just, to me, a dog and pony show, a foreign opportunity, a photo op.
Right.
That's what it's going to amount to, or what it amounted to. So now they get a little bit of attention because they were denied.
Hmm.
Wow. Again, like I say, you didn't have to be really following this closely to figure out that that's what was going to happen. And why are you crying and whining about it?
Right.
Just jump the next plane back to Canada and let it go. But
You know, it's almost like Greta when she tried to go with her entourage, her armada of boats to try to bring supplies into Gaza. She knew damn well she wasn't going to make it off her boat, as well as the rest of the armada of the flotilla. They all got picked up by the Navy. I mean, yeah, I guess they accomplished what they came out to do, is to get on the news, on the world news, right? They weren't able to deliver their supplies and basically got held and sent back. Are we talking about the same thing here? I really don't know. I'm eager to find out what was really the motivation behind this, because you're right, Gary. The more you talk about it, the more it's starting to make sense that there is a smelly fish here somewhere, and I don't know where it is. It doesn't smell right to me.
yep, exactly. To,
Yeah.
to put it bluntly, it doesn't. And yeah, maybe some of the MPs are rookie MPs. I didn't get a chance to check into that aspect of it, but it doesn't matter whether they're rookie or they've been around for a while.
Hmm.
Somebody should have known better that this would not be a good thing in the eyes of Israel and other countries, that we've got this entourage going off, and with the backing of the Canadian Muslim Vote Organization.
Right. Pardon my asking. There wasn't any cabinet minister
No,
in that group, was there? Okay,
no,
was a backbencher.
no. But there should have been a cabinet minister, like
You
our
would
foreign
exactly.
affairs minister.
Yeah.
If it was an official sanctioned trip by Ottawa, then you should have had some kind of ministerial representation,
Yeah.
official ministerial representation.
A minister, a deputy minister, or something of that level.
Yeah, well, I think if the prime minister wants us to recognize the Palestinian state, then I think he should have had a high-ranking minister, like our foreign affairs minister, go
Yeah.
and have a conversation with the Israelis and explain, we're on a fact-finding mission. But that's not going to go that far with the Israelis anyway, because as far as the Israelis are concerned, no,
Right.
get out. We'll handle it ourselves, kind of thing.
Right.
Basically, that's where they're going. Yeah, and let's just very quickly pop over here, because we do have a comment. Monel says the news does say that it was a private group that was going, so that does not sound like it was an official act. No, it definitely was not an official act by any stretch of the imagination.
That's interesting. I mean, if the newscaster is saying it was a private group, okay, fair enough. But if it's a private outing, if you want to call it, for lack of a better term, what the hell are MPs doing there?
Well, and why? Yeah, and I keep coming back to
Right.
why are they accepting payment, or not accepting payment, but accepting the paid trip?
Right.
If
A
you're
dangerous
going on a
one.
fact-finding mission as an elected representative of Canada, you should be going, you should be getting the okay to get the financing from the Canadian government, or the House of Commons budget or whatever. But you should be going that way, and not at the expense of an outside agency, an agency which one of the countries involved looks upon as a terror entity. So
That could not have been new news to them. I refuse to believe that. They
yeah,
had to have known that the Israeli government had already tagged these two organizations. Whether they are or not is irrelevant, first of all. Second of all, they had to have known the Israeli government's list of organizations they consider as terrorist organizations. So you kind of add one and one and you say to yourself, why would you still go out there knowing ahead of time that this is exactly how the Israeli government looks upon their funders, the people that funded them? It's yeah, that fish is really starting to smell worse, Gary.
it's just
The more and more we talk about it, the more it's starting to stink. There's something that's not right here, not
exactly.
right at all.
And I think, again, as I said earlier, I think the Prime Minister needs to step up to a microphone and explain exactly how this all came about, and whether he is comfortable with the MPs, the majority of which are members of his government,
Right.
accepting a paid trip by an organization that, the Canadian Muslim vote. It sounds to me, again, like you're trying to stack the odds in one way, and
Mhm.
only one way. And yeah, it's there needs to be a coming to Jesus moment, and we need this whole thing cleared up. Because again, a question I heard the other day is like, is this um, exposing more as far as growing divisions in how Parliament uh, reacts and handles the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Mhm.
So is this a tip of the iceberg? Is it going to, are we going to have a glacier fall off the iceberg kind of, or another piece of the iceberg fall off, and it's going in a different direction? Who knows? Like what's going to happen? But again, I feel the Prime Minister owes an explanation as to
Yeah.
how this all came about, and whether he is really comfortable with the group accepting an all expenses paid trip paid for by the Canadian Muslim Vote Association or
Right.
group, whatever, however they handle it.
Yeah.
So I think this is
Okay.
one we'll follow.
Yeah.
Probably not much is going to happen over the next 2 weeks as far as any kind of an explanation is concerned regarding this. But hopefully, once the dust settles and they get back to the Hill and start working, and maybe the first week of resumption of Parliament, somebody asks a question as to what the hell is going on here.
Yeah. You know what, Gary? I'd highly suggest. I mean, I know this is our last show for the year. I would really like for us to stay on top of this one to actually see what fallout, of any, we get out of the Canadian government and internationally on the first episode of the year. Just 5-10 minutes just to talk about it, because this is a big one, because this is going to set the stage for other areas of conflict in the world where can can Canadian MPs just arbitrarily pack their suitcases and go on an all-expense paid trip someplace to stir up things on behalf of the Canadian government when they're not representing the Canadian government? So that'd be a good thing for us to follow up in the new year.
Definitely. And if anything should happen to break between now and the new year, by all means, at the very least, we can post something on Facebook, and there's a community chat on our YouTube page as well. Plus, we can put it on Instagram, TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts, whatever. We'll get it out for sure, and then do a quick follow-up, as you suggested, Eddie, in our first show back in early January.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, we'll certainly do that for you, and we'll keep you posted one way or the other.